said, look what he did. Look what Pinchas did. And instead, Hashem said that what Pinchas did was the ultimate act of kindness. What Zimri did, even though it appeared to be he was standing up for his tribe's people, but really what he did was very cruel. Because he was at a time when there was a plague, and he was trying, instead of being a leader and an example, he only inflamed the situation. So outwardly, it appeared to be very kind. He was kind and permissive and liberal and understanding. But the reality was that Pinchas, who appeared to be very cruel, he took the life of Zimri and Cosby while they were intimate. He actually did the kind thing. He is actually the one who saved the Jews.
I'm sorry.
He is actually the one who saved the Jewish people. And he saved their life. And what was his reward? His reward was that he became a Cohen. What do you mean he became a Cohen? His father was a Cohen. Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, the high priest. Isn't a Kohen automatically a Kohen? If you're born a Kohen, you are a Kohen. How do you give someone a reward to become a Kohen? This is the first and last time in Jewish history that God rewarded someone by turning an Israelite into a Kohen. How did Pinchas become a Kohen? Why was that a reward? It was like the famous story. Someone comes to the rabbi and he says, convert me. I want to convert to be a Kohen. The rabbi says, listen, there's no such thing. You can't convert to be a Kohen. A non-Jew could convert to become Jewish. But an Israelite, no matter how hard you try, no matter how sincere you are, no matter how great you are, you cannot become a Kohen. He says, Rabbi, I'll give you $1 million donation, please. It means so much to me. It's important for me. I must become a Kohen. The rabbi says, come back tomorrow. Comes back the next day. He says, I researched. I did some intense research, and I saw we have a way of doing it. First, write the check. And he goes through the ceremony, becomes a Kohen. And finally, after the rabbi cashes the check and it's all done, he says, tell me, why was it so important for you to become a Kohen? He says, Rabbi, listen, my father was a Kohen, my grandfather was a Kohen. So how can you convert to become a Kohen? You are or you aren't? And the answer is because Hashem appointed Aaron and his 4 sons to be Kohenim. Those 5 were Kohenim. Aaron was the high priest and his 4 sons were Kohenim. And all their children who would be born from that time onwards would automatically be Kohenim. After their fathers was born before. He was born before his father Elazar and before his grandfather were designated to be Kohenim and to be the high priest. So therefore he was not included. He was not a Kohen until Hashem made him a Kohen. That was his reward. But it's a strange reward. What kind of reward is it? You are or you aren't. How can you turn an apple into an orange? That's why all these conversions are not worth the paper they're written on. Reform, conservative conversions. You know, if converting means you turn an apple into an orange, if converting means like you become an American citizen, yeah, of course. But conversion, how do you can't convert. How does a non-Jew convert to be Jewish? How do you convert an apple into an orange? You can sprinkle it from today to tomorrow. You can dip into the mikveh from today to tomorrow. How do you change? It's an impossibility. Unless it's a halachic conversion done the way Hashem wants it to be, then it's like a divine laboratory that Hashem says, when you do this, you get a new soul, you're like newborn, and that becomes your new birthday. That becomes as if the day you're born for the convert. Literally, that's his birthday. His Hebrew birthday is the day he converts, not the day he was physically born. Because it's like a birth. He becomes a brand new person. He goes into the mikveh, comes out. When you follow the halacha, it's done halachically. You literally become a brand new person. If you don't believe in conversion, you don't believe what conversion really does, then, but this is real conversion, and that could only be halachic. There's no other way. When you introduce things that are divisive and untruth, that is divisive. Like telling the truth, how could you be divisive if you're telling the truth? You can't suddenly come and create something that doesn't exist. Conversions that are not worth the paper they're written on. But that's only true of a non-Jew and a Jew. But how could you? It's impossible to convert an Israelite into a Kohen. It never happened. So what kind of reward is this? Why did God give that as a reward to Pinchas? And the other question is, why was Pinchas a vigilante? Does Judaism endorse vigilantism? Taking the law in your own hand? Going to take a life? If you're a zealot and you're angry and you're upset that he had relations with a non-Jewish woman in public, so you're allowed to go and take his life? The court won't take your life. The court won't even sanction what you're doing. You're on your own. If you come to the court and you ask the court, am I allowed to, should I go and kill Zimri? The court will say, we're not going to tell you. We're not sanctioning your actions. In other words, we're not protecting you. You're risking your own life. You're on your own. You don't have the security of the court being behind you. And therefore, unlike in a case where the court sanctions and the court sentences you to death, then you're not allowed to defend yourself. But in this case, Zimri would be allowed to defend himself. And if he in turn defended himself and killed Pinchas, he would be in his right. He's standing up for his life. He's defending his life. Pinchas is trying to kill him, murder him, kill him. He's defending himself. He's allowed to. The court will not sanction Pinchas' action. So he comes to court. The court stands by. The court doesn't say anything. The court says, we're not telling you yes, we're not telling you no, we're not sanctioning. You're on your own here. If you're a zealot and you're ready to risk your life and do it, you're on your own. So what exactly is the definition? What does it mean? Is this vigilantism? Is this a free-for-all? Are we a lawless society? Are we like Soviet America, like we are today? It's a lawless society. Everyone just decides what to do and takes the law in their own hands. Is this what the Torah is telling us? And it's fascinating that he was only allowed to do this only at the moment when they're having relations. Only at the moment that they're having relations. If he were to take his life a moment before or a moment after, he would be a murderer. And he would be sentenced to death. So the question is, why? And we don't find this in any other case. We don't find if someone is about to commit adultery, we don't find that you're allowed to take their life, even in the middle of the act of committing adultery. You're not allowed to. Yes, if you commit adultery, you can be sentenced from the court to death. But there's no extrajudicial killing. Even if a person is a murderer, you can't just extrajudiciously kill him. That's why what happened to George Floyd was so tragic. You can't just take the law in your own hand and kill someone. You have to take him to court. If someone took the police officer, Chauvin, and killed him out of court, he would be a murderer, first-degree murder. We're not a lawless society. You don't just do things on your own. There's a court, there's a system, there's laws. So why is this case any different? And the answer is that it's not vigilantism. What the Torah is telling us is that if someone publicly desecrates his Jewishness, by being intimate and having relations with a non-Jewish woman publicly in front of a minion, the law states that he deserves to die. But the law states that who is the one who's going to carry out the sentence? Unlike other cases when a person commits a sin that comes with a capital punishment, who is the one who's going to carry out the sentence? The zealot. Only someone who's ready to risk his own life. He's not playing it safe. Because he's a zealot, and it bothers him, this desecration of Hashem's name, this desecration of Jewishness, it bothers him to such an extent that he's ready to risk his life without the sanction of the court. The Torah says, and you are the one, you are the person that designates. But this is only to the moment of contact, when they're intimate. Because why? Adultery.
Rabbi, you're frozen. Hello?
How are we now? Are we better?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
If you have relations with a non-Jewish woman, it's a prohibition. There's no death sentence. You commit adultery, it's a capital crime. So why, only in this case, is there such a sentence that the zealot is allowed to take his life? So Maimonides says, because there's something very essentially very painful in the case of a Jew having relations with a non-Jewish woman. You know, since Abraham and Sarah, it's impossible for a Jew, a Jewish woman, to give birth to a non-Jew. It's impossible. Just like a human being will always give birth to a human being, it never happened in the history of the world that a human being will give birth to a monkey. You may give birth to someone who may act like one. Biologically and physically, a human being will always give birth to a human being. Why? Because it's your essence, it's your core. The fact that you're human is not something that's acquired. It's not external. It's your essence. And that's what you transmit in childbirth. You transmit your essence. So if you're human, that's what you're transmitting. To the end of time, it can't change. It will never change. Forever and ever, you will give birth. A human being will give birth to a human being. So too, a Jewish mother, born to a Jewish mother, all the way back to Sarah and Rebecca and Rachel, or Leah, or Bilhah and Zilpah, will always give birth to a Jew with a Jewish soul to the end of time. You can't change it. Now, you may give birth to a self-hating Jew, which just proves how Jewish they are. but a Jew will always give birth to a Jew. So birth is something that touches your essence. The male also participates. In his sperm, he's giving his essence. So the essence of a Jew always remains a Jew, even in the case of adultery. So yes, in the case of adultery, your essence will give birth to a child. If you commit adultery, will give birth to a child who's a mamzer. You've messed them up for life. They're truly victims. God cries together with the mamzer, with the bastard. But he's Jewish. And a mamzer who's a Torah scholar, we give more honor than a high priest who isn't. He's 100% Jewish. Just he's born in sin due to no fault of his own. A crime of passion by his parents in a moment of insanity. His whole essence is born in sin. So he's a mamzer, he's a bastard. He can't marry a regular Jewish woman. But he's 100% Jewish. Because the essence doesn't change. You only transmit what you are. You transmit your very core and essence. Since your core and essence is Jewishness, so you transmit that to your child. The only exception is when a Jew has relations with a non-Jew. Then you're transmitting your essence, and your essence has now become non-Jewish. It's a crossing of boundaries. And that's why the zealot, with every fiber of his being, every bone in his body, is on fire. What bothers him more than adultery is this trespassing, this transferring, this crossing of boundaries. This irrevocable, irreversible crossing of boundaries, taking the essence of Jewishness, of holiness, and transforming it into something that's not Jewish. Now today, unfortunately, due to no fault of their own, Jews grew up without a single positive and meaningful Jewish experience. So much of the intermarriage today and the assimilation is due to ignorance. People just don't know. I don't know if this law would apply today because they simply don't know any better. But at the time of Pinchas, at the time of that generation that stood at Sinai, received the Torah, for a Jew to deliberately and consciously and carelessly have relations with a non-Jewish woman, and with the possibility that you're going to give birth to a non-Jew and you're going to transfer the essence of holiness, of your holiness, the essence and core and essence of your Jewishness, and transfer it into a non-Jew. The zealot is on fire. And therefore he's ready to do something about it. And if it's done in public, only when it's done in public. So he has to do something to demonstrate how reprehensible this is, how terrible this is, what a tragedy this is a true zealot who's ready to risk his life, not only risk his life, his physical life, but he risked his standing in the community because everyone hated him for it. Everyone accused Pinchas of being a murderer. You killed the prince of Israel with your zealotry. You killed the prince of Israel. And it was only Hashem who came to his defense. And Hashem said, no, Pinchas saved the Jewish people. Pinchas is a hero. Hashem approved of his actions. Hashem applauded his actions. And Hashem says, how am I going to reward him? Since he defended boundaries, the crossing of boundaries, that you shouldn't cross the boundaries between Jew and non-Jew, Hashem says, I'm also going to cross boundaries. I'm going to make a non-Kohen, turn a non-Kohen into a Kohen. Although Pinchas was born a non-Kohen, I'm going to trespass those boundaries, the first and last time in Jewish history, and I'm going to turn him into a Kohen. And Pinchas, the rabbis say Pinchas, he's Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet was also a zealot. He stood up for Hashem, for the honor of Hashem, single-handedly took on the king, King Achav, took on the 250 prophets of Baal, of the idols, and he single-handedly challenged these idols and returned the Jewish people back to their faith until they shouted out, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim, God is God and God is God. And Elijah the prophet told them, as we say in the Torah, he challenged them. He says, why are you sitting on the fence? Make up your mind. Either you're going to worship the idol or worship Hashem. Better, he says, better to worship the idol than to worship, than to sit on the fence, to be a fencer. Why? Why is it better to worship an idol than to sit on the fence? Because he said there's something very corrupt about the agnostic, about the fencer. He says, better deny God, better be an atheist or be a believer, but don't be a fencer. Because a person who believes there is a truth, now you may be wrong, you may be worshiping the wrong truth, but at least you're not corrupt, at least you believe there is a truth, and you're ready to follow that truth, and you're ready to worship that truth, and you're ready to sacrifice everything you have for that truth. So maybe you're climbing the wrong ladder, but there's hope that one day you'll grow up and you'll realize that you're worshiping a false God, and you'll be disillusioned, you'll be disappointed, but then you'll start worshiping the true God. But you're a believer. You're a worshiper. You believe in truth. You believe that there's something greater than yourself. The agnostic, however, the cynic, the one who straddles the fence, is very corrupt, a very corrupt soul, because he's avoiding any decision. It doesn't bother him not to believe in anything. Okay, so there is no truth. So what? I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the idol. I don't know. Maybe yeah, maybe not. Maybe there is a heaven. Maybe there isn't a heaven. Maybe there is truth. Maybe there isn't. Doesn't bother me. That shows that the person is corrupt. He's not a genuine person. He doesn't believe in anything. And he's okay with it. That person is hopeless. How will he ever find the truth? If he doesn't even believe that there is a truth, or it doesn't bother him, he doesn't lose any sleep at night. He's not searching, he's not seeking, he's not restless. That's a corruption of the soul, a person who won't make any decisions, completely indecisive, and refuses to make any decisions, refuses to take any stand. You know, a person just blows with the wind, wherever the wind is blowing. You know, that's like a Zelig. That's like a character out of Woody Allen. Person who has no backbone. Person who has no moral center. Person who has no spine. Person who has no courage, no conviction, no truth, no honesty, no integrity. Better worship idols. At least you have integrity. You really believe. Okay, you believe in something false. But at least you are a believer. You believe. You have integrity. There's hope. But a person who has zero integrity, no backbone, no spine, no decision making, avoids any decisions, plays it safe. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to take any stand. I don't want to take any risks. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get involved. Leave me out of it. I just want to play it safe. It's like the story with Abraham and his brother, younger brother, Haran. When the king, Terach, challenged Abraham, Abraham was ready to be thrown into the fire. He said, I don't worship idols. I believe in God, the invisible God. And he was thrown into the fire, and he was miraculously saved. Haran, his younger brother, was a fencer. He said, I'm going to see what happens. If Abraham wins, then I'm going to be with Abraham. If Abraham loses, then I'm going to be with Terach. When he saw that Abraham was thrown into the furnace, into the fire, and he was miraculously saved, he also declared, okay, I believe in God. He felt safe. He felt sanctioned. And it didn't work for him. He was thrown into the fire and he burnt. He died. This was Sarah's father, Haran. He was a fencer. You can't be, Eliyahu said, you can't be a fencer. Just like Pinchas, who the Talmud says, the rabbis say he is Eliyahu. The law states that only a zealot is allowed to carry out this law, that if a Jew has relations, is intimate with a non-Jew in front of 10 Jews, you can take his life at that moment of intimacy. Why only a zealot? Who has no sanction of the court? Because if you come to the court and you tell the court, do you give me permission? Are you going to watch my back? Are you going to protect me? The court says, you're a follower. You're not a leader. You don't have any backbone. You don't have any spine. This is not for you. Go home. This is not a mission for children. This is not a mission for the faint of the heart, for weaklings. This is a mission of leadership, only for leaders. A leader doesn't need the sanction of the court. A leader doesn't play it safe. A leader doesn't ask for permission. A leader leads and does what's needed at the moment. If you're a true zealot and your heart is on fire, and it bothers you with every fiber of your being and every bone in your body, this public desecration of Jewishness, this trespassing and tearing down of walls and boundaries. If it bothers you, what do you have to ask a question? You know what you have to do, and go ahead and do it. And if you have to ask a question, this is not for you. You are not the one who's going to carry out this law. Go home. And this is why Israel made the same mistake and keeps on making the same mistake over and over and over again. Israel, every time Israel comes to the United States of America and asks them permission to do what they have to do against their enemies, the United States answers, and rightfully so, no. Because if you have to ask, then you're a child. You're not a man. You're not a real person. You're not for real. The Jews are supposed to be the leaders in the world. And Entebbe, they didn't ask any questions. Before the 6-Day War, Israel didn't ask any questions. In 1981, Israel didn't ask any questions. And had Israel asked the question, if they would have asked the United States, do you give us permission to take out the Iraqi reactor? Do you give us permission to preemptively strike the Egyptians? Do you give us permission to save the Jews in Entebbe? The answer would have been no, and America would be right. You have to ask us? Go home. You're a weakling. You're a coward. You're a child. We thought the Jews are going to lead the world. You're supposed to lead us, lead us by example. You have to ask us. If you're looking for our sanction, if you're looking for our safety, do you have permission to tie my shoes? Go home. This is not for you. This is not for the faint of heart. When Israel acted with leadership, when they did the right thing and took a risk, 67, Entebbe, in 1981, miracles happened. And after Entebbe, there wasn't a hijacking anywhere in the world for the next 10 years because Jews led the way. We were courageous. But ever since Oslo, we became like children. Oh, Mr. President, do we have permission to tie our shoes today? And unless we get permission, we don't do anything. And that's where we lost all the respect of the world. You have to be a Pinchas. There comes a time when you have to be a leader. You have to be that zealot. Stop straddling the fence. Stop playing it safe. A little integrity, a little courage, a little backbone, a little spine, a little leadership, a little oomph, a little spirit. It's a very intangible quality. You have the spirit, you have the guts, or you don't have the spirit. During World War II, everyone shied away. Peace in our times. There was one hero, Churchill in England, and he led the country, lifted their morale, and they overcame the Nazis. You need a leader. You need someone who's decisive, who has clarity and is ready to take the risk and ready to do what has to be done courageously. And that's what Hashem was looking for. Hashem says, this is my man. This is my hero. This is a real person. Thank God there's one real Jew around called Pinchas, who saved the day. Heishiv es Hamasi. He soothed my anger. He is called peace. He brought peace. Yes, he did an act of zealotry, but it actually was the ultimate kindness that led to real shalom, real peace. By standing up for truth. You don't make peace by compromising truth. You don't make peace by tearing down boundaries and saying it's okay. A non-Jew we can call a non-Jew a Jew and it's somehow okay in the name of peace. Let's just get along. In the name of peace, let's tear down all the boundaries. Jew, non-Jew, men, women, all boundaries. That doesn't lead to peace. That leads to division, divisiveness, as we see today. So Pinchas, Eliyahu challenged the Jewish people. Don't straddle the fence. Make a decision. Either choose Hashem, choose God, or choose the idols. Better choose the idols than playing it safe, sitting on the fence, not taking any sides. Because you have to have the courage of your conviction. You have to make a decision. One way or the other. Avoiding decisions. Avoiding uncomfortable decisions. Avoiding responsibility. Corrupts a person. It means you're not real. Life is not real. You're not making any choices. Better make a wrong choice than not making any choice. Not making any choice is not an option. That's not a way to live. You have to make a choice. You have to take risks. That's the only way you grow. It's the only way you go forward. It's the only way you move forward. And then life is real. But if you choose to avoid all choices, to play victim and not take any responsibility for your life, I am suffering today because 150 years ago, something happened to my ancestor. That's a cop-out. That's not living life. Living life is taking responsibility for my life today. I'm making a choice. No one in the world can make that choice for me, but I am making the choice. And I will seek the truth, and I will try to choose the right thing to the best of my ability. And if I'm wrong, I'll happily admit it, and I'll choose the right thing. But I'm not going to avoid life by avoiding choice and avoiding that responsibility. So Eliyahu is a zealot, and he's a challenge to us. He's very intense. He's fiery, very powerful. And he's challenging every one of us. Make that choice. Make choices. Strengthen the boundaries. Healthy boundaries. And it's only then that you live a life of peace. Real harmony. These boundaries bring harmony between Jew and non-Jew, between men and women. It brings harmony to ourselves, inner harmony. As the Talmud says, there's no greater joy than resolving doubt. Because up until the moment you really make a choice, your life is in flux, fluctuates. Your life is unstable. And you can never be happy. You notice that everyone who plays victims are never happy. Nothing can make them happy. Even if they got everything they wanted, nothing can make them happy. They're miserable, they're angry, they're depressed. They're angry at the whole world and angry and depressed, and nothing could satisfy, could make them happy. The only thing that can make you happy is if you take your life in your own hands, you make a choice, take responsibility for your life. Don't blame your problems on anyone around you, not on your parents, not on society. Realize my life is my choice and I have no one to blame and I have no one, it's all up to me, and make those choices decisively and move forward. And then once you make a choice, there's no greater joy. That's what leads to inner peace and inner happiness. You're ready to make the choice, take those risks, take the actions that you need to take, and go forward. So it's a very powerful parsha. It's a very challenging and demanding. And if we can live up to that, that's the recipe for real peace. Peace within ourselves, peace amongst us, and peace to the whole world. It was Pinchas's action that led to true peace. Hashem testifies. Risi Shalom. What he did was harmonious and peaceful by acting decisively and forcefully. Anyone has any comments, questions, thoughts? You can unmute yourself.
Rabbi?
Yes. Hi, Lauren.
I'll jump in there.
Sure.
It seems like whenever I hear this parsha, it seems like pretty harsh, pretty graphic to spearhead two people who are together. Seems like a very harsh lesson, you know? Like almost even hard to believe.
Well, it's actually what's harsh is what Zimri did was very harsh, because that led to a terrible, terrible plague. Thousands, tens of thousands of Jews lost their lives. It seems on the surface, it seems so loving. What could be more loving? Two bodies together, Jew and non-Jew, hugging each other, embracing each other, being intimate with each other. Kumbaya, it's peace and love, it's all wonderful. Nothing could be further than the truth. When we tear down the boundaries that Hashem placed in this world, between Jew and non-Jew, men and women, all we do is it leads to conflict. It leads to divisiveness, and ultimately it can even lead to death. Versus when we have healthy boundaries, that leads to harmony, that leads to peace. Yes, it's paradoxical, it's counterintuitive. But when society has the highest common denominator, the highest values, we are demanding of ourselves and of each other the highest values, then we have a peaceful, harmonious society. During the Depression, people slept with their doors open. There was no crime. In the shtetl, there was no crime. There was no violent crime. Today, with all the permissiveness and all the peace and love and anything goes and everything goes and everyone plays God and everyone decides what is, what isn't, what's right, what's wrong. There is no right, there is no wrong, there are no truths. We've never had such division, such divisiveness. We've never had such tension, such hatred. We've never experienced anything like it. Not in my lifetime. In these United States of America, we're as ununited as could be. We don't even live in the same universe anymore. So what appears to be nice and loving is actually very cruel. Permissiveness leads to cruelty. Look at all these spineless, feckless mayors and governors who allowed all this crime and mayhem. In Seattle, the love, right? The summer of love, right? What did the mayor there say? This clueless nincompoop, summer of love. And what happened? How many people were murdered in this Chad or whatever it was called? She had to stop it because it was so ridiculous, so out of hand. The mayor of Atlanta is crying. An 8-year-old kid was murdered. New York City, murder, mayhem. De Blasio's New York. This permissiveness, oh, everything is wonderful. Permissiveness is cruel. That's cruel. Abolish the police, defund the police, that's cruelty. This is what leads to mayhem and to crime and to chaos and to cruelty. People are hurt. Black people are hurt. Black Life Matters. They're a bunch of thugs. They don't care about black lives. They're a terrorist organization, a Marxist organization. They're anti-Semitic. They hate. They've already marched last Wednesday, death to the Jews, death to Israel. They don't care about black lives. Who are these people who are being murdered every day in Chicago and Atlanta and New York, in Seattle, all these cities run by these spineless, permissive, liberal, open-minded people. They're so open-minded, their brains fell out. Who are the people who are getting hurt? The blacks that they claim that they care about. So permissiveness is cruelty. What Pinchas stood up for, he stood up for morality, for values. Hashem says he led to peace. He calmed, he brought peace. He brought life, he brought health, he brought success to the community. Because a community that has healthy boundaries is a blessed community, is a unified community, is a community that will succeed and thrive. A community that's permissive, that's lawless, that tears down all boundaries. That's cruelty. That's hard to believe. What we're seeing today is hard to believe. Where's a Pinchas when you need him? To stand up to all these thugs, bums, gangsters, lowlifes, terrorists. Everyone is so intimidated and so taken in by, oh, but it sounds so loving. It's all love and peace. There's nothing loving. There's no peace. It's the exact opposite. We've never had such divisiveness, such hatred, such tension, such anger, such negativity. such evil that they have unleashed in America. What happened to George Floyd was a tragedy, but what happened afterwards and its aftermath is a far greater tragedy. It's misguided. So the Torah is teaching us a very powerful lesson. Permissiveness may sound to be nice. I'm being nice. What could be wrong with being nice? Anything goes. I'm being nice. I want to make the person feel good. I don't want to take a firm stand. They should have nipped this in the bud. I don't care how angry you are. There's nothing in the world that can justify a single crime. They should have stopped the first crime, the first store that they looted, the first person that they threw a brick on. They should have arrested them and kept them in jail, and this would have nipped this in the bud. You want to protest? It's a free country, but no crime. But this permissiveness, but they're angry. We have to be nice. That's what kills. That's cruelty. What Pinchas did was the ultimate kindness. He stopped it. He nipped it in the bud. And he restored society to a law and order society. And that's Hashem testified. He brought peace. Yes, it was a tough thing that he did. Tough love. But he stopped it. He stopped the lies. He stopped the desecration. He stopped the defilement. He stopped the trespassing and tearing down of boundaries. He stopped the lawlessness. You know, children, they did a study. Children who grow up without any boundaries. Children who never hear the word no. Children who have no impulse control. They don't know what it means to say no to themselves, to stop. Later on in life, have a very hard time adjusting. They have problems in their relationships. Children who are able to taught no, and there are boundaries and have impulse control, are well-adjusted adults. They have very healthy and very successful relationships in their lives. They thrive and they succeed wherever they go. So permissiveness, it sounds nice. I want to be nice to my child. I don't want to say no. But if there are no boundaries, it's cruel. We're being cruel to our children. Pinchas appears to be tough. Tough love. That's the ultimate kindness.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I have a quick question. If it's considered proper to kill a non-Jewish woman and a man while they're in the act, they have to do it while they're in the act.
Only if it's in public. Only if it's in public.
Like it happened. So if it happened, why didn't Moshe knows that himself that he's supposed to do this? Moshe knows the law. Why did Moshe not do it? Why do you have to wait for Pinchas?
It's a very good question. So it says the reason why Moshe forgot the law is because he was personally challenged. Zimri challenged Moshe. He says, you married a non-Jew. You married Zipporah, the daughter of Midian. So when Moshe became the issue, Moshe had to recuse himself. Because it says, if you make a law, if you suddenly say a law, and you only remember the law after you become a party, then we don't believe you. Oh, now suddenly you're coming up with this law. Now that you're affected, now you're suddenly coming up with this law. You know, you don't have the same credibility.
I see.
You know, like now, I just read now, just before the class, 100 liberal lights, including Chomsky and the one who wrote the, all the children's books about magic, Rowling's.
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling's and Harry Potter, and then a few others from the New York Times just published a letter by 100 of these literary lights complaining about the cancel culture. He said, we went too far. If people don't conform, the police, the thought police, we immediately cancel them. They lose their careers, or if they're not zealous enough in defending He says, what happened to liberal democracy? People are afraid to say what they think. By the way, all these 100 that signed this letter, because they themselves are being attacked. They have no problems when conservatives are being attacked. But suddenly when they're starting to eat their own, when they're so crazy that they're starting to attack their own, now all of a sudden, oh, we don't like this anymore. It's no good. It's too far. So, no one can take them seriously because, now you wake up. If what really bothered you, if the principle was really a principle, it was a principle last week also when they were attacking conservatives.
Mhm.
Then it wasn't the principle. All of a sudden, now it hit home. It's getting too hot. It's getting too close to home. When the mayor in Seattle decided to close down Chad or whatever it was called? When the protesters showed up in her house, she said it. He says, oh, no. This is too far. Suddenly it hits home. All of a sudden, now she got sense. He says, no, this is too far. We have to shut this down. So they have, a person like that, a judge like that has no credibility. Moshe couldn't because he didn't remember the law. All of a sudden he's challenged and now he remembers the law.
Doesn't look right.
Doesn't look right. He's not objective. He lost that objectivity.
Right.
So he couldn't do the law. Pinchas, okay, you go ahead. It's up to you. It's in your hands.
So did we answer the question though? If Pinchas was a Kohen to begin with?
No, he wasn't. Because he wasn't born a Kohen.
Oh.
When he was born, his parents and his grandfather were not Kohen. His father was not a Kohen. His grandfather wasn't a Kohen. When Hashem chose the Kohanim, he only chose those 5 people, Aaron and his 4 sons. That's it. And all the sons that would be born from that point on.
Okay.
So he wasn't born a Kohen. Hashem, it was a special reward that Hashem made him a Kohen.
That's it.
But it also teaches us a very powerful lesson. A person shouldn't say, who am I? Let the leaders lead the charge. I'm a nobody. Pinchas was a nobody. He wasn't a Kohen. He was a simple Jew. So Pinchas could have said, listen, there's a problem in the community. There's a fire burning. Let Moshe lead the way. Who am I? I'm not a leader. I am a nobody. But the Torah teaches us, don't say that. If you can lead, jump in and lead. Don't rely on the rabbis. Don't rely on Moshe. Don't rely on the leaders. You become a leader. You stand up. If you feel that something has to be done, and you can do it, jump in and lead. Don't make calculations. Let the leaders do it. When you see the leaders are not leading, there are no leaders. There is no leadership, and that's across the board. And stand up and be a leader. Pinchas, he stood up on his own, an individual, no backing, no sanction, ridiculed, maligned by the whole community. He risked his spiritual status, his reputation. Everyone hated him for what he did. But he said, there's a situation. Nobody is around. Nobody is leading. I'm going to lead. And he saved the day. It's a very powerful lesson. Any situation in our life, if there's a situation that needs fixing and you can do something about it and it bothers you, don't wait for any invitations. Don't wait for anyone to appoint you, to sanction you. Go ahead, dive in, jump in, and with Hashem's help, you'll lead, you'll succeed, and you can be the one who can save the day.
Amen.
Thank you.
So tomorrow, instead of the Thursday class, we're going to have the class tomorrow. It's before the fast day. Thursday, if God forbid Mashiach doesn't show up, is a fast day. So we'll have the class tomorrow. Tomorrow, 7:30, and we're making a Tzion. We're concluding it's the 39th cycle that Jews all over the world study all 14 books of Maimonides, which incorporates the entire oral Torah.
Wow.
So tomorrow night, really, on Thursday, we conclude Maimonides, so we'll make a Tzion tomorrow and the Rambam. Please join us, 7:30, and everyone have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank
Stay
you.
well,
Thank
stay
you,
healthy, stay
Rabbi.
safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Rabbi.
you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Sei gesund. All the
Let's
best.
see.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good night.
Rabbi.
Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure.